And good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. Happy Republic Day. I am Pauline Joseph, and I am pleased to welcome you to a new Facebook Live series from the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. It's called Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to the new normal of COVID-19. Join us as we will be speaking to individuals across the financial industry who will help you understand financial literacy and education. I have so many questions about money, and I'm sure you do too. So make sure to follow the button on Facebook to get notified the next time we go live. Today, we're going to have a conversation about fraud with Antonio Ventour. He is the manager of corporate investigation services at RBC and has been employed within the financial sector for over 30 years. So he has a wealth of knowledge, and I can't wait to pick his brain. We're going to discuss the trends around dating apps because there's an influx of Trinidadians and Tobagonians using dating apps, and there is such a wealth of knowledge to get from Antonio as it relates to social engineering because it's so interesting. We're going to talk about what business owners should take, the steps that they should take to protect their online business, and what banks are doing to reduce the fraud. So stick around for the next 60 minutes. We have so much to learn, and in the last 15 minutes of this session, we're going to have a Q&A. So take out your notepads because I know you have a lot of questions. So let's bring Antonio in, and here we go. Can you hear me, Antonio? We just want to make sure that we have the live session.
Yes, I can.
Yes, okay, great. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of fraud, which is such an interesting conversation, I want you to give the audience some insight to how did you get here? Where did it all start when it comes to your professional journey to be where you are right now?
Well, I like to tell people I wrote common entrance and passed for RBC. So I've been here for a while. And it started off in the security operations department. And then I was transitioned into the recoveries unit. And from the recoveries unit, back in January of 1991, I was assigned to the investigative unit. And I've been in that unit since then. And now I've been managing that unit for quite a number of years, and now my responsibility extends throughout the Caribbean. Anyway, there's an RBC in the Caribbean, that's my responsibility lies.
So what drew you to this space?
Well, I always liked that. If I wasn't here, Pauline, I would be in the police service, more likely, because I always like that sort of like that type of done military style and investigations particularly, right?
Okay. Wow. All right. So let's dive into what is fraud and why we should all be aware of your sector, because we have this idea, and it might be in part to movies, where you see someone with a hoodie typing away on their keyboard and they're about to take over NASA. That's usually what we apply to fraud. But I want you to share with everyone out there why we should all know about the fraud industry.
Okay, so what is important, Paul, you need to understand that at the end of the day, the foundation for fraud is deception, right? The perpetrator's intention is to deceive the potential victim, right? So they need to present things to you to make it look as real as possible, so as to fool the victim into believing what they are saying or what they are presenting, thereby causing injury to the victim in the context of that person parting with their goods or services and or cash. Right? So at the end of the day, deception.
Sorry about that. You're getting a little feedback with my. I'm trying to figure it out as you speak what's going on because we're live, right? So the feedback is a little strange. So when you talk about fraud, I want us to delve straight into the discussion about dating apps, right? Because as a single woman, and also in addition to that, a lot of people don't have the coping mechanism of going outside as well as being able to meet people in person has been completely stripped away from us, which is in itself, just mentally having to deal with that is enough, but then also taking that emotion and going online and trying apps for the first time. So I want you to start off with what folks should look for when they are entering this space, this new space of dating online.
Okay, so the mere fact, I'm not saying that the dating app, I can't say you could call it a social media platform. Once you're talking dating, if you say that you're entering a dating app where you want to interact with people, right away you recognize that there's a lot of emotions to be playing there, right? People going into dating apps, you said that you're a single person. So when you go into a dating app, your intention is to go there to probably meet someone who's similar to you and see, maybe build a relationship with that person and see where it goes, right? But at the end of the day, it is all based on emotions. And when it comes to social engineering, Pauline, that is the foundation of social engineering, playing on persons' emotions. So these fraudsters are very aware of people who go into dating apps, and they know exactly, they themselves would be on the said dating app, but they're not looking for anyone to love. They're looking for a victim, right? And they are so versed and so well trained that they could identify potential victims quite easily. So they'll be able to present to that person exactly what they want to hear, exactly what they want to see, and exactly how they want that person they're looking for to behave. And they will present themselves in that way, right? And the key issue here is to socially engineer themselves into your space to the extent where you become comfortable with them. And then they take over in a context of identifying what you are financially to them. Whether you have money, they could get that from you, or maybe they could use you in one way or the other to move their money, right? So it's not a case of just, it's not a case anymore people having a bank account and having money in their bank account. If you have you just have to have a bank account. Even if you have no money in your bank account, you will still be used to a fraudster in the context of moving whatever money he has to move. So being on a dating app, one has to be very, very careful, because on that very said dating app, I can guarantee you will find fraudsters who are very versed in social engineering, and they will play with your heartstrings and cause you to do and say things that you're not supposed to do and say.
So, can you tell me a little bit more about social engineering? Like, what does that term mean?
Right. So to make it simple, not scientific, is that this you put someone finding themselves in your space to the point where you trust that person, right? They will eventually deem you as a friend, right? So you know the person likes a certain type of sport, you find yourself in that environment and pretend as do you like that sport as well. The key thing is to show similarity to your potential victim, right? Whatever they like, you like. However they speak, you speak the same language. So you bring yourself into that person's space to the extent where they trust you. So you're building trust, and everything, as I said before, is based on emotions here. So they find themselves in your space, because when you find people who like what you like, you tend to drop your guard a little faster than persons who may be in your space and maybe adverse to what you like. Right? So social engineering simply means someone putting themselves in your space and pretending or presenting themselves in a fashion in terms of liking what you like. They want to be similar to you to make you comfortable with them so that they could trust you.
What advice would you give to individuals? Because we are in a very complicated time, and a lot of the times we may not realize that this has affected our mental health. Our guard may be down, and you may be relying on something, or we're hoping that something is there that isn't. So what would you suggest the person do to be mindful, or maybe an exercise or a habit that they can create to avoid being put in that position?
Now, Pauline, even before COVID-19, persons were becoming victims of social engineering and fraud as a consequence of this person allowing, or this person moving in such a way that you eventually trust the person and you are now more or less parallel in terms of your feelings. Right? Now, at the end of the day, speaking from a fraud perspective, the fraudster's intent is to deceive you or to use you in one way or the other. Right? So if you know that you're on a app, a dating app, or even on social media, I guarantee you, Pauline, that once that person brings any financial transaction into the conversation, anything financial at all, where they want to actually be asking you for money or they're sending money to you, from the moment that person brings a financial transaction or anything resembling a financial transaction into the conversation, this is where you need to be on your guard 100%. Whether you're speaking to that person for a week, a month, a year, or a decade, from the moment that person brings anything financial into that conversation, where they would like you to do something for them, they may not be taking money from you, they could be sending money to you. And from the moment they do that, they are now including you in their more or less proceeds of crime or their criminal activity. Right? So anytime, one of the biggest red flags, from the moment you see they present any financial type of conversation in that relationship, you need to step back and pay attention.
That is so. I mean, I am personally taking notes, but we also have people chiming in here. Shade, thanks for the feedback. Yes, this actual headphones does not have a mic, so that's not the issue here because they know they're getting a little feedback. But don't worry, I'm working on it on the back end, and we are going to address some of your questions at the end. Romel, I see you. Don't worry, I got you. Later on, we're gonna reach to you. So. When it comes to this type of behavior, and this is a safe space, guys, we want to be able to, guys and girls, men and women, we want to be able to be frank on what trends are out there. And can you share some insight as to who would be liable, like who is likely to be falling for this type of trend? What is the demographic of that person?
Okay, so we're on risky ground here now, so I need to be careful. But the persons who remember we see these things every day, and the persons who fall prey to these things are people who tend to be a bit lonely, right? Persons who more or less live on social media. Social media is their life, right? So your profile is on social media, and you are more or less open to the entire world, right? There are people out there looking for people like you. Right? Doesn't matter what jurisdiction you're from. And from the moment they look at your profile and they look at your conversation and they look at your friends, they could identify more, they could more or less profile you and say, okay, this is a potential victim here, and they start to speak to you in a particular way. Right? They send you photographs of their dog, they send you photographs of their yacht, they send you photographs of some charity they're involved in, right? They try to find out from you what it is you like to see in other people and present those things to you via the phone, photographs, and maybe even live streams and that sort of thing, right? So you more or less have to be very. If everything is based on emotions, Pauline, right? You need to not trust too quickly, right? And as I said, the marker for that sort of thing is from the moment they bring any sort of financial element into any conversation, that is your first red flag, more or less, to step back. Now remember, at the end of the day, when you are on these social media sites, you're having a faceless conversation. At some point in time, you may ask that person to present themselves. And what they are presenting to you, 9 out of 10 times, would not be exactly who the exact person is speaking, who's behind that face. It could be something totally different. Trust me.
And we are in an emotional time, and you mentioned before, even before that, folks tend to make emotional decisions, and I'm guilty of that. I make emotional decisions when it comes to money. I should do better on my savings. But when it comes to that emotional element, because we are humans and we do tend to put that at the forefront of everything, what advice would you give to somebody who would be embarrassed by the fact that they've been duped into this space and they're not too sure where to go, if to admit it to somebody? What advice would you give to that person?
Well, the mere fact the person is embarrassed is a good thing, right? That means that they are conscious of what happened, right? You wouldn't be embarrassed with something you don't know, right? So the mere fact that you're embarrassed, that's a good start, right? Now, at the end of the day, you would have lost something. You would have lost finances. Someone would have duped you, conned you out of your funds, and which at the end of the day, it boils down to fraud, right? Embarrassed or not, you need to report that matter to the police. There's a particular arm of the police called the fraud squad. You need to go there and you report that matter to the police with the hope that they could investigate and give you some redress in the context of finding the perpetrator and or getting back your funds or giving you some level of justice. Embarrassment is good. From the moment you feel embarrassed, you know, okay, I really screwed up here. I did something wrong, right? You need to accept that embarrassment and use it as a catalyst or a motivator to move you forward in terms of treating with whatever the situation is. So use the embarrassment. Don't let the embarrassment use you. Don't use it as a barrier or a stumbling block to go forward. Use the embarrassment as a motivating factor, right? To get out there, report the matter, because by reporting that matter, you would be surprised to know that you are helping other people, helping the police help other people, helping other people to not become victims of that sort of thing. If you are in a social media space, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, doesn't matter where, and something happens to you in that space, you have the option in that space to share your experience with other people and say, well, look out for this and look out for that, and to help protect other people. So the embarrassment is good, and it would help you to move forward. But the key thing is report instances. Once you've been defrauded, report it. Report it to your bank, report it to the police, and move forward and try and get redress for your situation.
I like what you said about, to be embarrassed is to be human, because, aren't these individuals these fraudsters, hoping that you would be embarrassed and not say anything in public?
Well, it's not a case of the fraudsters hoping you would be embarrassing. They don't care, right? The objective is to use you, either to get your money or to use you to move someone else's money to get to them. So whether you're embarrassed or not, they just don't care, right? But as I said, these guys they are experts, right, at social engineering, and they may even use that embarrassment to get you deeper involved in the process, because they may align themselves and bring a similar instance where they had the same situation and what they did, hoping that the relationship that you have with them will continue and they could use you even further. But generally, they don't care.
Wow. So let's flip it a bit and talk about the business side of things. What are the trends that you've seen in the business sector that are common trends for fraud?
Right. So speaking in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic situation, we all are aware that the digital space is where most people are, right? You cannot leave your house, you can't go anywhere. So your phone and your computer is your contact to the outside world. Now, when it comes to the business places, these are where the transactions would take place in terms of customer, goods and service, and merchant. So what we saw is an uptick in what you call point of sale machine skimming, right? It's an uptick in skimming where the fraudsters have been able to infiltrate these businesses through rogue employees. So they would approach persons working in these business places, and they would ask them to bring those point-of-sale machines to them at some point in time. So we have evidence of that. Anything I say to you here today, Pauline, is not fiction, is not a study. It is pure from pure experience and what we're seeing every day. So the fraudster approaches the rogue employee working in the establishment, invigilates that person to take that point-of-sale machine and bring it to them at some point in time. They would then outfit that or rig that machine to the extent where they could install a particular type of malware. That rogue employee brings it back to the establishment and sets it up where it's supposed to be, and customers are getting skimmed as they process their transaction. So it is not a case of the machine finding itself there by accident, right? You need someone on the inside to do this. And because of the uptick in skimming, and when we investigate these things and the frequency in which it is happening, we recognize what the typology is. Where we have evidence, video evidence of rogue employees actually taking the point of sale machines, moving it out, and bringing it back in the next day after it was rigged and outfitted with equipment to skim cards.
So, what steps can business owners take to reduce fraud?
Right. So business owners need to, in the context of the point of sale terminals, business owners need to treat those terminals just as how they treat their cash, just as how they treat their checkbooks, just as how they treat their goods and services. You wouldn't have it out there for the public just to use and to see. Now, obviously, the public has to use the point of sale machines, but you must put some security measures around that in the context of where it is placed and how you operate with that machine. During the course of the day, obviously, your customers must see the machine. Your employees must see the machine where it is. It must be in a place where you could interact with that machine safely and conveniently. But at the end of the day, you cannot leave that machine out where it could be stolen or removed by anyone quite easily, right? You have to set certain protocols around that machine. You have to lock it away or leave it in a place where your CCTV system is capturing any activity around that machine. And those are the things that helped us in our investigation in terms of treating with some of these investigations, where the merchants were actually able to provide us with CCTV footage showing how the employees were removing the machines and taking them away and bringing them back. So one of the main factors is you need to have some CCTV system around your business. That's one. Two, you need to see the type of machine. You have to understand the type of machine you have in your possession. You have, maybe if you so wish, you could take a photograph of it and keep it safe. So just in case that machine looks different at any point in time, you could compare it to what you knew you had. Just recently, a merchant visited his establishment just by sheer accident, really, because he was in the area. He said, "Me pass in and check and see what's happening." And in less than 5 minutes, that merchant was able to identify that the point of sale machine that he had and the one he's actually seeing there were two different machines, right? So he was able to recognize just by sheer visual that, hey, something's wrong here. This machine is not the machine that came to me from my bank. And he was very correct. As a matter of fact, the investigation showed where the perpetrators came in and physically switched out the machine and left. But because of his diligence and because he knows exactly what type of machine he has in his establishment, he was able to look at it and identify the fact that it was removed and this was not his particular machine, and he did the right thing. He called the bank immediately. The bank shut down the machine that was stolen, and he called the police. The police came in and took away the machine that was in his possession as evidence. So these are the things you need to know. The merchant needs to know what the machine looks like. They need to know whether they have a 860 or 520 machine. You need to know exactly what type of point-of-sale machine you have. You need to know what it looks like, from the keypad to the reverse side of it in terms of all the tags and everything. You probably take pictures of that and store it away safely. So just in case you have any doubts in terms of a machine you're seeing there, you can compare it right away. You need to be able to lock that machine away at the end of the day and not leave it in a place where it could be easily removed. You need to limit your certain employees in terms of access to those machines. And once you exercise all of those little things, simple exercises, you will tend to be in a much safer place in terms of your point-of-sale machine being remaining genuine.
Wow, I could sit down here and speak to you for hours because you must have a wealth of exposure to what is happening and the trends. And I'm seeing the questions coming fast and furious. Guys, don't worry. When I've seen you, I saw your question. We're coming to you in the last 15 minutes. We're going to do a Q&A. And don't forget to head over to batt.org.tt and sign up for our newsletter. And what I want to do is, in the same vein of business conversation and business owners, I want to talk about e-commerce. Because for businesses to survive, there's this mass exodus, or I shouldn't say exodus, addition to their revenue stream, which would be online, and trying to ensure that their business survive with getting their customers. So I would like you to share what trends are you seeing there and what folks should look for, because there are a lot of folks that are going there for the first time. So they want to make sure that they are setting up a website that reduces the likelihood of fraud.
Okay, so if you're trying to set up a website that would reduce the likelihood of fraud, I wish you all the best, right? At the end of the day, Pauline, it doesn't matter what processes you have. Anytime there's the human element aspect anywhere involved in that process, well, if your process has 10 points, any one of those 10 points where you have the human element interfacing with your process, that's your weakest point. Okay? Now, in terms of the e-commerce issue or scenario you brought up, now, communication is mostly via email. Communication, obviously, is in terms of businesses and their suppliers, or businesses and their customers, you will find that happening via emails, right? So then you're bringing into the picture now something we call business email compromise, where sometimes the merchant or the business owner is having a conversation with his suppliers. Or obviously, he will have to pay these suppliers using his online facility. What you find happening is that the fraudster would intercept or intervene in that conversation, right? It's either the fraudster would hack the supplier's email, or the fraudster could hack the merchant's email. And in the context of having the merchant and the supplier believe that they're speaking to each other, but that's not the case. And when the instances where the fraudster would hack the supplier's email, the fraudster would communicate with the merchant in such a way to more or less redirect any payments the merchant would have for that particular supplier. So what they do, they either spoof the supplier's email, or if it's a domain email, when I say domain, I mean .com. If it's a domain email, the fraudsters go online, they purchase a domain email, and they present a web page similar to that of the supplier to begin interacting with the merchant. But the objective at the end of the day is to get that merchant to wire the funds to the fraudster and not to his or her suppliers, right? So the key thing with that, what is important for merchants to know and understand, is that if you depend on your e-commerce communication only, if you depend on that type of communication only, you may have a problem. It is important for you to build a relationship with your suppliers, a relationship in the context where you could pick up your phone and speak to somebody there who you know their voice and you know what they do. Now, you may say that, okay, we're in the western part of the world, the supplier may be in the eastern part of the world. You may have a 12-hour difference in business. Trust me, I would urge you to make a phone call at 2:30 in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning and be inconvenienced for a couple of minutes than to be a victim of fraud in that way. Because most times, the funds that you're losing is US dollars, not TT dollars, but US dollars, right? So what merchants need to look out for when it comes to these types of frauds is that when from the moment you get a message from your supplier, and that message has one of the three things, or all three, where they're changing the beneficiary bank, or they change the beneficiary account number, or they change the jurisdiction in which the funds are going. Either one of those three, two of those three, or all three. From the moment that is changed, trust me, I guarantee you 99% of the time, it is fraud. You need to ignore that. You need to contact your supplier through the safest means and verify if they actually changed their banks, if they actually changed their bank account number, or if they're now doing business in this new jurisdiction in which the communication is coming to them. From the moment anytime you exercise that measure of diligence, you tend to be, you have a better chance of not being defrauded. So it's one of the three things that always change. The fraudster always changes the supplier's bank account number, bank, or the jurisdiction in which the fund's supposed to go, right? So we need to be mindful of that. When it comes to business email compromise as well, Pauline, it not only happens between the business and their supplier. Now remember, we're talking e-commerce here, we're talking everything that is going digital. And when it comes to certain companies, the people in those companies who occupy that position where they could instruct people to send funds, right? Sometimes they become victims of hacking, and the fraudster would use their email and send an instruction to their accountant or their finance department to send out a particular wire to wherever the fraudster desires. Now, you find in most instances that anyone in a finance department or an accountant getting instructions from the CEO or the CFO to do a particular wire, you may not want to challenge that because that is a senior person, they know what they're doing, right? But what you need to look out for in those circumstances is what you find to be a weird or odd request, right? Because you know, as a business, you're accustomed dealing with supplier A, and you're accustomed sending the funds to account number 12345 to bank number XYZ, and all of a sudden you're getting an instruction from your CEO or your chief financial officer telling you to send funds in relation to the same business to another bank, another account number, right? You, as an employee, you need to step up and go to the CFO or the boss and say, listen, this looks strange to me, and verify whether that request is so, right? Now, what I would recommend the chief financial officer and the chief executive officer to do as well is to make yourself open to that kind of conversation with your junior staff, right? Where they could come to you to verify transactions and ask questions in terms of getting instructions when it comes to wiring out money. Because at the end of the day, Pauline, it doesn't matter how elaborate the fraud is, it doesn't matter how simple the fraud is. The key thing is to get their hands on your money and for you to wire out money. And it is a very painful thing, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic, to be losing US dollars, whether it's 1,000 US or 1 million US, or a similar impact. It's very difficult. So once you know these little things, how to put these type of little controls within your business, you tend to stand a good chance in terms of not being defrauded.
So there was a story you shared with the wire transfer, because we're also, shifting into the expectations of banks being able to wire transfer stuff between local banks. I mean, externally that happens as well. But you mentioned a story about the request for someone sending you a certain amount of money and then saying, oh, I sent you too much. You need to send me back. I found that very interesting. Could you share that story with everyone out there?
Okay, that fraud typology is similar to the advanced fee fraud. So in other words, so here you have you're the owner of something that you want to sell, and you put that item on social media for sale. You put it on some web page that advertises items for sale, and someone from another part of the world reaches out to you and says, I'm interested in buying that item from you. They would, one of the two things they could do. They could send you what seems to be a manager's check for the cost of the item, or they could send you something resembling an attempt to wire the payment to you. Now, to make it even more interesting, they may not interact with you, the owner of the item, directly. They may say, because of the value of the item, I want to be so cautious. Could you go through a law firm or go through someone a broker or somebody who could manage this transaction for us, right? And they would send the payment to that particular institution or that particular person. But let us say the item is costing $100,000. They would send you a check for $150,000, or they would send you or something for a greater value. And right after you receive that payment, you will get a notation from that said person that says, okay, I know you asked, I know the item is worth $100,000, but I sent you 150,000. Could you kindly send back the 50,000 for me? Now, the fraudster is hoping that you would have taken that item and credited it to your account. And the fraudster is also hoping that you have 50,000 in your account, right? So when you go to your bankers and you give them instructions to wire this 50,000 back to this particular person, what you're really doing is sending out 50,000 of your money, because at the end of the day, the check that they sent you or the communication they sent you showing you that they wired the funds to your account, it is not real. It's fraud. It doesn't exist. So you are now out $50,000 and you have a worthless check in your possession. So they send you more money than they're supposed to send you, with the hope of asking you to send back to them the amount that wasn't supposed to be part of that transaction.
Wow, that is so. Businesses, as a business owner, you have to be vigilant with your staff, with your customers, and with your money. And that in itself requires an enormous amount of time and effort and processes in place. So, for like, let's say for a small business that may not have a CFO, what advice would you give to that business owner? As it, you mentioned that it's hard to eliminate fraud completely, but in terms of processes, how important is that?
Well, now, Pauline, there was a question you asked me earlier on, and there was a part of it I didn't answer. So I'll use this response to answer that part of that question as well. Now, when it comes to these smaller businesses, what you find is that they tend to be victims of check fraud, right? And there is an uptick of that since this COVID-19 pandemic situation arose. What you find happening is that the fraudster would probably send someone to represent him or her to your establishment and identify the items that they would like to buy from you. This is strictly local. I'm speaking here. This does not have international flavor in it, right? So they would come and they would order this stuff. They would either call you on the phone, or they would send somebody personally to go and look at your items, or just walk in as a customer and identify the items that they want, and then ask you what is for total amount. And they would promise you, okay, I'll come back at a particular day with a manager's check to buy these goods and services, right? They would then send the guy with the truck to pick up the items with that particular manager's check. They would give you the manager's check, they would take the goods, and they would leave with it. What you would find happening is that when you go to your banks with that check, the check is no good. It's fraud. And here it is, you have already parted with your goods. So you run to the police, you report the matter to the police, only to realize that the driver was paid probably $150 because he is not part of the fraud. He actually came to pick up goods from that establishment because he was paid to do so by somebody else. Because if the fraudster took $350,000 worth of goods from you, and they could pay a driver $150 to come and collect it, it's still profit on their part, right? And by the time the cops interview the driver would probably say to them, well, while I was on my way to deliver the goods to where I'm supposed to go, I was intercepted by the person who requested it. And they came with another truck and they went away. So the fraudsters tend to separate themselves a lot from these types of fraud. And what we're seeing an uptick where these smaller businesses in Trinidad and Tobago, they are being targeted in terms of the fraudulent managers' checks. So the question may be asked, well, how do I treat with that? How do I verify if the check is good or not? You need, as a business owner, you need to understand that you are not to part with your goods until you verify that check is authentic.
And I want to head over to what the banks are doing. And we're going to answer a few questions because we have a few in the comment section. But before we get into that, I want for you to share what is the overall approach to the banks as it relates to reducing fraud, and what are the measures taken by them?
Okay, so let's take it from the level of banks, right? The Bankers Association. You have the head of each institution forming the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago. The Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, there's a subcommittee for almost every area of the bank, whether it be operations, whether it be legal, whether it be compliance, And so the Bankers Association, they have what you call a anti-fraud and security committee. I'm part of that committee. Our committee is headed by Hayden Defoe. Right? So that's just one aspect of it, where the banks meet bi-monthly and sit and discuss fraud and fraud-related incidents, so as we could see what's going on in everybody else's shop and know what's going on in the industry and put things in place to more or less protect the bank and its customers from this type of fraud. Now, whether the bank has a process for almost every service they provide, whether it be the check service, whether it be checks, whether it be online banking, whether it be loans, the bank has processes in place for almost every aspect of whatever goods or service they deliver. Now, all of the banks obviously are pushing digital banking, right? They're pushing online banking because that's where the world is going. So clearly the bank is aware of any fraud-related risk that could be connected to online banking, and the banks have put things in place in that regard. By that I mean that once you are a customer that has an online banking facility, you will have what you call a two-factor authentication approach, right? So from the moment you log on to your web page, the moment you send that transaction, that entire process is protected through the two-factor authentication process. So it is safe to do your banking online. It is much faster to do your banking online as well. And even that same scenario I just expressed to you with respect to the fraudulent check. What if that transaction was authentic? You go into an establishment to purchase an item, right? You could, in front of that person, you could actually wire the funds to that merchant's account, and they could probably verify one way or the other whether that transaction was processed or not, but depending on the type of transaction. But that is part of getting the digital aspect of things going. It is much faster, makes banking a lot easier and a lot more convenient. But in the context of what the banks are doing, we have fraud committees that meet on a regular basis to discuss what's happening in the bank, so as to put things in place to protect the bank and its customers, most important. And when it comes to processes, whether it doesn't matter what the service is, whether it's digital banking, whether it's check fraud processes, as the case may be, we have measures around each aspect of that type of service. But the key thing these days, where we're looking at digital banking, where the banks are pushing online banking, right? We have what you call the two-factor authentication process, which is very solid, and obviously the bank has this robust network of protection. So customers are very safe in that regard. You could do your transactions online and feel very secure that it is safe.
It makes shopping a little bit longer than it usually is, because I usually see the verification notification comes up when you click shop or add to cart, and then you've completed it. But being on hearing what you're saying means that it's protecting me when that two-factor authentication comes up. So as a consumer, I understand a little better, but as a business owner, it's something that you should definitely mandate in your e-commerce environment. And for those out there, if you've just joined us, make sure to visit batt.org.tt to sign up for the Straight Off the Bat newsletter, where we will be covering all these discussions that we're having via newsletter and sharing insight. We also want to hear feedback from you as to the things that you would like to learn. So we're going to head over to the comment section. And we have Romel Baptiste here, and I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but I'm going to just translate it on his behalf. Romel, if you're still with us, you could elaborate. But this is definitely a trending conversation. And, do you have any advice to people who are interested in the pyramid schemes? What is your take on that?
Okay, so when it comes to pyramid schemes, there's just one thing you have to say. Somebody will lose their money. Full stop. If you enter the pyramid scheme early in the game, where you bring two people and then those two bring another two, maybe you will get your reward, as the case may be, depending on who you're dealing with. But when it comes to pyramid schemes, one of the constants, or one thing you're sure will happen, somebody's going to lose their money, because the pyramid will crash. And persons who maybe at the bottom end of it, who came into the scheme, would lose their money. There's nobody that walks away from a pyramid scheme, right? Any pyramid scheme, there are people who walk away losing their money. You will lose your money when it comes to pyramid schemes. No two ways about it.
So can you, because as a young teenager with not many options at the time, I looked for it. I did dabbled in it because it seemed so promising. But can you first of all share with the audience what is a pyramid scheme? Because sometimes folks call it marketing, they say I'm marketing, affiliated marketing. But maybe share some insight as to what exactly it is and what questions you should ask, because there's this glimmer of hope. I'm just looking back into my teenage self and saying, well, if I work hard, I'm going to make at it and I'm going to do this and I'm going to bring people in. So that's two questions. What exactly does it look like? And what questions should you ask if you've been approached by it? Multi-level marketing. Thank you, Melanie. That is the word I was looking for.
Well, as a matter of fact, you just described what the pyramid is, because you said the exact words, I can bring people in. So let us say you stopped. So let us say you invested in a pyramid and you stopped. Does the pyramid go beyond you? Let us say everyone who invested just stopped and stopped bringing people in. What happens to the pyramid? It stops, right? So the pyramid is only successful when you bring other people in. So you have to be able to sell and bring people in. There are some people who say that their tongues are very sweet. They can sell ice and Eskimo, right? But at the end of the day, once you cannot bring anybody in, what happens to you? Are you going to go and say, I want back my money? Forget that, right? So that's exactly what pyramids, you see the structure of a pyramid. 1 point, a wide base, right? So the more you bring people in, you have to expand further and further and further and further until at the end of the day it thins out. And the people who at the bottom line, they are the ones that tend to lose their funds. So I would not ever encourage pyramids. I would never encourage anyone to get involved in a pyramid, because at some point in time somebody's going to lose their money, and you never know what could happen when you bring someone in and that person loses their money. They'll be coming to you to retrieve, and you never know what can happen. Right? So
so you're saying basically, sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
I say that's exactly what pyramids are. The foundation of a pyramid is the ability to bring other people in under you, right? So as to cause the pyramid to grow. But if you look at it from the perspective of where it stopped, you just stopped. You came in, you put your money in, and you just stopped. You didn't bring anybody in. The pyramid would die, correct? Good. So it all depends on you being able to bring other people in. And how good are you at doing that? So it's better you take that same money and invest it elsewhere.
Okay, so don't even bother to ask questions. Just if it comes to you, just go the other way, basically. Okay. Noted. All right, Romel. He said thank you. That's exactly what he wanted to find out. So this question comes from Erwin. It's pretty long. I'm gonna just because it's kind of blocking us out, but I'm gonna read it. And I think it's a good question, so you can address what BATT is versus what the banks do, because there seems to be a correlation for some, right? So fraud due to skimming seems to be on the rise in Trinidad and Tobago. I've experienced it. I wonder if BATT is looking to put more in place to support and banking customers in terms of skimming. So I'm just gonna, because it referenced his experience. I was required to go into the bank, get a statement, take it down to the fraud squad, go back to the bank, and then have them forward same to my act.
So the question there is, how do you proceed if you are skimmed?
Well, more along the lines of the process as it relates to BATT versus the process for each bank is different. So, the question is brought to BATT Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and I want you to respond as to what BATT is doing versus, the different responsibilities of the association versus the banks.
Okay, now I wouldn't say that the process is different in all of the banks because it involves, first to begin, the customer, it all starts with the customer indicating that he or she, they're seeing transactions on their account they know nothing about, right? So if your card is skimmed, at the end of the day, you will eventually find out your card, something is there are transactions on your account you know nothing about. You didn't authorize it, you weren't there where these transactions came from. Right? So obviously you will go to your bank and say, listen, I'm seeing transactions I know nothing about. And the bank will then ask you to fill out a particular claim form and they would start to investigate your claim. If while they're investigating your claim, they recognize, okay, that there's a similar claim coming in from this person, there's a similar claim coming in from that person, there's a similar bank saying, okay, they're getting, so you're getting common complaints among not just the same bank, but other banks as well. You tend to now to want to believe, okay, something is happening somewhere, skimming is taking place somewhere. What all the banks would ask the customers to do is to fill out the what you call a customer complaint form, to use the general term, and they would investigate, right, to determine whether it is skimming or what transpired. Because we've had numerous instances, Pauline, where persons claiming that they were skimmed simply because they know skimming is taking place and they see transactions on their account they know nothing about, only to find out later on is more or less a domestic situation. Because once fraudsters skim your card, they don't leave anything there, right? You wouldn't have 5,000 in your account. A fraudster goes to the ATM and take out 300 and leave the rest. It don't work like that, right? They exhaust your account until everything is finished, okay? And then 2 days later, you see another 300 come out. 2 weeks later, you see another 500 come out. Fraudsters don't operate like that, right? It's somebody who has access to your card and your PIN doing that. When it comes to skimming, when fraudsters skim your cards, they exhaust your account immediately, or the best way they could, either through point-of-sale transactions or through the ATMs, right? But you find that once the customer makes a complaint, the bank would also encourage the customer to go to the fraudster to report it because you have been a victim of a crime. You have been a victim of a crime, so go to the police and report it. So even when at the end of the day the bank is investigating the matter, it could support the police investigation as well. Because when you as the customer go to the police and say, listen, I'm seeing transactions in my account I know nothing about, they take a report from you. The bank would also give you a copy of your statement to support that report when you go to the police, and then the police will come across to the bank and say, I'm investigating this matter in relation to this customer person's claim, and you identify whether it's a domestic situation or whether it's skimming. But the entire process, the general process is the customer must fill out the complaint form. The bank would then investigate the matter, and depending on the findings, the bank would make the necessary adjustments.
Wow, that is so interesting to learn. The patterns of being skimmed or taken out money that completely leave you dry versus a little bit here, a little bit there. All right, so we're gonna answer this final question about skimming because I think it's definitely in collaboration with the stuff that you were just discussing. How can customers protect themselves from point of sale skimming?
Okay, so you may not ever be able to protect yourself from point of sale skimming because you may be doing a transaction on a terminal that looks normal to you. It looks normal to the merchant, right? What I would advise customers to do is to make sure that you have online banking so you could check your accounts immediately. Doesn't matter where you are, you have access to your account. So sign up with your bank for online banking, whether be it mobile banking on your phone or any device that you have, so you can access your account right away and reconcile your account on a daily basis, right? Once you look at your account on a daily basis, human beings are creatures of habit, and once you start doing that every day, it will become normal, and you will be able to identify anything on your account that is not supposed to be there. Any transactions on the account you know nothing about, and you would pick things up pretty early when you do that, right? So to say that you go into a merchant and you look at a terminal and you realize you could look at it and say, okay, something is wrong with this terminal. I can't say that because the terminal may look very, very normal, but it could be a device that was rigged at some point in time. What you need to do is that to be mindful of where you did the transaction, right? Who processed the transaction for you? Once you see it, things on your account that don't look normal, right? We had the instances where delivery drivers who were going to person's home and having a dummy terminal and an authentic terminal, right? So under those circumstances where you may swipe your card at a point of sale terminal and you may get a receipt that says that the transaction didn't go through. I'm not saying that it is fraud, but you have to be mindful of those things and immediately check your account, right? Immediately reconcile the account. If you do that every day, Pauline, you will tend to pick up on any anomalies or any issues related to fraud on your account.
I think it also goes back to what you mentioned about the emotional aspect of it, assigning emotion to money. If you're very clinical about your money, you're likely to understand the patterns and realize when something is wrong.
Yep.
So Terian, I saw your question. We're not going to answer it right now because that's a very bank-related question. So we're going to slide into comments and respond to you. Just remember, everyone out there, Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago is focused on financial literacy and education. When it comes to specific banking issues, we advise that you speak directly to your bank. So in closing, Antonio, any final words to the community out there when it comes to fraud?
Right. 3 things. 1, it is important to have a bank account in this day and age. In this digital day and age, it is important to have a bank account. Do not allow people to ask you, or do not allow people to use your account to perpetrate fraud or pass for proceeds of crime through your account because you may run into a problem with your bank. That's 1. 2, we are living on social media. From the moment you have a relationship with anybody on social media, it doesn't matter whether you're speaking to that person for, as I said before, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade. From the moment that person brings a financial transaction into the conversation, whether they're asking you for money or whether they're sending money to you, 9 out of 10 times, it is fraud. 9 out of 10 times. Because they played on your emotions. You now trust them, and they know exactly the particular fraud they want to perpetrate against you. So going forward, folks, we all living on social media. As I said, it doesn't matter how friendly you are. It doesn't matter how much you trust them. From the moment they bring a financial transaction into the conversation, whether it's for $1, whether it's for $100 or $1 million, it more than 90 is fraud. Walk away.
Wow, I already had trust issues, and after this conversation, it just heightened. But it's such great information. I could speak to you forever. Thank you so much for joining us in our session on Straight Off the Bat. The feedback is very positive. Everybody definitely learned something. Thank you so much, Antonio. I'm just gonna let everybody know this is a series that we are hosting on the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago Facebook page. It's called Straight Off the Bat, a show that covers the need to revive, survive, and adapt to the new normal. Join us because for future episodes, we're going to continue the conversation to help you understand financial literacy and education. I have so many questions about money, and I'm sure you do too. So make sure to smash that follow button and be notified the next time we go live to have a discussion about money. Happy Republic Bank. Oh my gosh. Happy Republic Day, Trinidad and Tobago. I hope you enjoy it and remember what this day is about. Have a good day, guys.